coming up in this episode.
By pulling it out and going and making the psycho sound. And advancing on Jerry a little bit. And Jerry didn't back up, so I don't know what was in his mind.
I did not know that.
Thanks for stopping by. I Did Not Know That Classic TV Edition. Please like and subscribe.
I'll think about it.
That's all I ask.
The core group of characters in the 90s TV show Seinfeld were Jerry, Kramer, George, and Elaine. With that said, there were also secondary characters that were almost as popular as the main ones. Newman, George's parents Frank and Estelle, Putty, Jay Peterman, and a few more. Seinfeld was one of the biggest shows in the 90s. Being a regular on the show was huge. Actor Lawrence Tierney was supposed to join the cast as Elaine's dad and be a reoccurring character, but he totally blew it. His odd and creepy behavior not only intimidated the cast, but made everyone uncomfortable. Aside from that, he did something so strange that he freaked everyone out and he was never invited back. Before we get into what he did, let's look at Tierney's career, which was long, strange, and almost always controversial. If you really only want to hear about the incident, you can skip to the 5:30 mark, but you are really going to miss some fascinating stories. A film critic once said, "The hulking Tierney was not so much an actor as a frightening force of nature."
Remember Scarface? Remember Little Caesar? The enormity of their crimes was exceeded in real life by the man you're now looking at, John Dillinger.
Lawrence Tierney's acting career began way back in the 1940s. His big break came in 1945 when he played mobster John Dillinger. What followed was a string of parts playing bad guys and mobsters. It appeared that he might be on his way to becoming a big star playing tough guys, much like Bogart and Cagney, but he always seemed to sabotage himself. Paramount Pictures had plans to sign him to a contract, but the proposal was dropped after he was arrested for fighting in a bar. From 1944 to 1951, he was arrested a dozen times for brawling and frequently for drunkenness. He spent 90 days in jail for breaking a college student's jaw. In 1958, he was arrested for fighting two policemen outside a Manhattan bar. He was arrested 6 times in California and 5 times in New York on similar charges. In 1973, he was stabbed in a bar fight on the west side of Manhattan. Not surprisingly, he found it harder and harder to find parts, and his film career slowed down, so he began doing television. He had parts in programs like The Alfred Hitchcock Hour and Peter Gunn. Charles Bronson had a TV series called Man with a Camera. Here, Tierney is introducing himself to Bronson. He eventually moved to France, but only stayed for a few years before returning to New York City. But his troubles with the law continued. In New York City, he ended up working as a bartender, construction worker, and drove a horse-drawn carriage in Central Park. He was supposed to star in a film called Joe, but was soon arrested for assaulting a bartender who refused to serve him any more alcohol, and he was fired from the film. Through the years, he'd occasionally find work in things like Star Trek: The Next Generation, Hill Street Blues, The Naked Gun, and oddly enough, he even did an episode of The Simpsons.
Your son Bart has been caught shoplifting. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a shame, I know, but, well, try and have a Merry Christmas. They weren't home.
You're having a good day, and you're a nice guy, but because you bumped into Lawrence Tierney, he's gonna ruin your life. All right.
Director Quentin Tarantino has a history of using older, once famous actors past their prime in his film. He helped Tierney resurrect his career a bit with a part in one of his movies. Tierney played, surprise, surprise, a crime boss named Joe Cabot. But Tierney had trouble remembering his lines and he got very frustrated. He began to lose his temper, and this led to Tarantino and Tierney getting into a shouting match that came close to becoming physical before the other actors pulled them apart. Remember, Tierney was an old man by this time. During the filming, Tierney shot at his nephew in a drunken rage and once again was arrested and had to be bailed out of jail. Tarantino vowed never to work with him again. Actor Chris Penn, who was in that film with Tierney, tells this story about Tierney stealing a vase from a restaurant.
When he's done eating the tiramisu, he takes the pewter vase from the center of the table. He goes, I'm gonna wait for you out in the truck. He goes out to the truck. He said, I didn't take a vase. I said, who said you took one? I said, what's with one? He said, I didn't take nothing.
So now that you know a little bit about Lawrence Tierney, let's get to what happened on Seinfeld. The show was looking for someone who could portray Elaine's father and could do it with an intimidating presence. Larry David said the storyline was based on the father of a girl he had dated. I'm sure at first it seemed like they had found the perfect fit for the role. That is until Tierney's aggressive and real-life intimidating personality began making people nervous on the set.
Lawrence Tierney, I think, scared the living crap out of all of us.
He was a total nut job.
Lawrence Tierney scared me to death.
We kept our eye on Lawrence.
And it's too bad he was so cuckoo because I'm sure he would have been back otherwise.
It all culminated when Tierney apparently decided he liked a butcher knife in the kitchen of Jerry's TV apartment. So he slipped it into his jacket, probably just like he did the vase. He wasn't very smooth because it seemed like the whole cast was aware of it. When Jerry confronted Lawrence, the whole thing got even stranger.
Went up to him and he goes, hey Lawrence, what do you got there in your jacket?
What's with the knife? And you see the color drain out of Tierney's face because now he's been caught.
And then Lawrence tried to make a joke about how he put the knives in his jacket. He thought it would be funny.
By pulling it out and going, and making the psycho sound. And advancing on Jerry a little bit. And Jerry didn't back up, so I don't know what was in his mind.
I have to tell you, this guy scares me.
As you can imagine, that was the end of Tierney's short stint on the show. There is no doubt Lawrence Tierney was a troubled person. In reading about the people who'd met him, he seemed to go through life as a contrarian. If someone said it was cold, he might say it was warm. If they said it was funny, he'd say it wasn't. But with that said, many also said that they had fond memories of him and he could be charming and nice when he wanted to. As always, thank you so much for visiting my channel. Check out the other videos I've got. I've got over 75 of them, so I think you might find one you like. Thanks again.